Okay, everyone on, just keep in mind we're recording now. So just for posterity's sake is what I say.
Hey, Chris,
Yes, sir.
was my music just playing?
No, I can't hear any music, buddy.
Thank goodness. I had a little Posty Malone going on over here. We're not live right now, are we?
We are, Johnny.
Are we? Well, oh well, busted.
I mean, you're going to get a news report in the Star Democrat that you're a Post Malone fan. Okay, members, it's 9 a.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today is February 20th, 2026, the Eastern Shore Delegation agenda. I'd like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Senator Croza, could you please offer prayer for us this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues and friends of the Eastern Shore Delegation. If you'll pray with me. Heavenly Father, today we ask for special blessings and grace on our watermen and farmers and their families featured on our Maryland State Seal. Our watermen are facing dire challenges with tough markets and destructive weather, limiting watermen to 1 to 2 days of fishing per week. And our farmers and poultry growers continue to face bureaucratic challenges, making it so difficult for their livelihood and for being the source of our food. Dear God, we pray for mercy and assistance from these troubling conditions, and we pray that our trust in you be strengthened as we know you are a rock and refuge. We close with Psalm 46. God is our shelter and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. The Lord Almighty is with us, and together we say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. Members, could I get a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from February 13th?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Good morning, members. Today we have a long agenda. We've got a lot to go through, but I want to just start by saying we got a call last week from Kennedy Krieger Institute. This is certainly something that's been discussed quite often. This fall, Senator Crow's Delegate Sample Hughes led some meetings back in district on the subject. So when we got this call, we wanted to give them the venue as soon as we could. So we've decided to fit it in here today. We're going to introduce Brad Schlager, who's the president and CEO of Kennedy Krieger. And members, what I would say is because of the issues with our watermen and the opportunity for Josh Kurtz to be online today, that we try to adhere to the calendar as best we can. We'll have opportunity for Q&A, but let's just try to be mindful of the fact that we've got a long agenda and we'd like to try to get through it with everybody being able to present. So without further ado, Brad, if you're online, the floor is yours, and we look forward to hearing this very interesting and important update.
Thank you, Delegate Adams, and good morning, everybody. As you heard, I'm Dr. Brad Schlager. I'm the president and CEO of Kennedy Krieger Institute. And on behalf of my colleagues who were able to join the call this morning, Emily Arneson, Nikki McCann, and Dr. Aaron Parsons, and Dr. Nancy Grasmick, who I think hopes to join the call, it's really a privilege to be able to present to you this morning our commitment to bringing a Kennedy Krieger school to the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And if you allow, I'm going to put up some slides so I can take us through a presentation. I hope you all can see the slide deck.
We can see it.
Great. So we think of ourselves and try to acquit ourselves as a resource for the state of Maryland. I hope you see us that way as well. And we do so in the context of being nationally and internationally recognized for the work we do to improve the lives of individuals across the lifespan, pediatric focused, who have intellectual, developmental, neurological, and rehabilitative needs. And we do that through a suite of services and programs that I like to say wraps our arms around these issues in their entirety in a way that is unmatched elsewhere. through clinical care, through special education, which will be the focus of our talk today, through home and community-based services, research, professional training, and through advocacy. Though I'm sitting here in Baltimore and our primary site is in Baltimore City, we are now in 6 Maryland jurisdictions, shown here on the slide. And one of our most recent openings is a school in St. Mary's County, which I'll talk about more in a bit. And though we sit in these 6 jurisdictions, we serve Marylanders from every jurisdiction in the state, as well as every state in the country, and from dozens of countries throughout the world. But today our focus is on special education and the commitment, as I said, to bring a Kennedy Krieger school to the Eastern Shore. I think many of you know that we serve publicly funded students. We do not take tuition. It is entirely in the service of publicly funded students who are referred for placement by the local education agency when the school system recognizes that student's needs, educational, behavioral, and clinical, are unable to be met. So we serve children, adolescents, and young adults with a wide range of disabilities: intellectual, neurological, physical, and developmental. And we think of ourselves as undergirding the public school system for the state. We presently have 5 schools. 3 of them are in Baltimore, a K-8, a high school, a autism-focused life skills and education school that's also in Baltimore City, a school in Prince George's County, northern end of Prince George's County in Beltsville, and our most recent school, which is in southern Maryland in St. Mary's County. Our students, we have nearly 500 unique students per year. This year, I think it's around 485, for example. We serve students from presently 15 Maryland jurisdictions and DC. And importantly, because we provide clinically related services for these often complex students, we have on the order of 75,000 school-based clinical visits per year. And because we are a clinical medical institution as well, the ability to bring clinical expertise into the school is one of the ways that we set ourselves apart from other organizations. I want to show a video, edited, shortened version of a video from that describes how we were able to, in partnership with stakeholders in Southern Maryland, bring a school there.
People can't provide for themselves. We should be providing for them. That's our big role when a family has struggles. And that was one thing that if you talk to the parents and these other siblings of the children that are here, they say that by creating Kennedy Krieger, it's been a life changer for them.
Mark is so smart. He just struggled staying in the classroom, and his meltdowns got so bad that he became too disruptive to learn. The only schools, after talking to people, was in Baltimore or DC. So it was an 1.5 to 2 hour bus ride one way. And that just felt very tough.
No child, depending on where they live, is more or less important than someone else. And when Senator Bailey had brought it to our attention, so the whole body's attention, the Senate, that is, about the need in Southern Maryland, that some students were driving 2-3 hours to get the schooling that they deserve. That is not acceptable. Wouldn't be acceptable for my own child. That's not acceptable for someone else's. And Southern Maryland deserves it.
Southern Maryland has been a blessing, because when Mark came here for orientation, they just were so welcoming. And from day one here, Mark has gone to school full time. I think the hardest part about when you think of your child's future is, especially someone with special needs, is what happens when you're not there. So I think my hope for Mark is that he'll be independent. And I'm hoping that here that he gets the confidence to do that.
So the school opened in September of 2023. I think it's really important to emphasize the critical nature of the collaboration with leaders like Senators Bailey and Zucker. It really started with Senator Bailey reaching out, and that combination of leadership and collaboration really brought us across the finish line. We also had letters of support from the superintendents in the Tri-County, Southern Maryland Tri-Counties of St. Mary's, Calvert, and Charles. We also are serving Southern Prince George's County. And in addition, the site is on the USM at Southern Maryland campus, which creates another collaboration with a state entity that was also, the idea of which was brought to us by Senator Bailey. Now, if you look at the MANSEF map of where the so-called non-public schools across the state are, this is the Maryland Association of Non-Public School and Educational Facilities. This is demonstrating, for example, down in St. Mary's County, that our school stands alone. If you look at the Eastern Shore, there is one very good school in Caroline County, the Benedictine School, excellent facility, friends and collaborators, but the great expanse of the Eastern Shore is unrepresented by this kind of school. And we've had multiple forms of engagement with leaders and stakeholders from the Eastern Shore. It really, for us, started with the outreach from Healthy Minds for Shore and Mike Dunn and that team. A really remarkable initial visit and many conversations since. Also engaging with the Eastern Shore of Maryland Educational Consortium, ESMEC, and Dr. Kelly Griffith and that team, the consortium of superintendents. Very importantly, with Senator Carrozza and her staff, along with discussions with Senator Zucker directly, and other communications with our friends at Washington College and with Dorchester County, including with Dr. Thompson, superintendent there. So a lot of engagement. We're, as I say, fully committed to bringing such a school to fruition. We do have some partnerships right now, primarily engaged with Wicomico County through a handful of MSDE Elevates grants. Over the last several fiscal years have created robust collaborations there as well. We put in a capital request on behalf of this initiative to the Office of Senator Zucker, who of course is chair of Capital Budget Subcommittee for Budget and Taxation on the Senate side. And this is for the purpose of bringing this school to fruition. So I'll close with that. Just see our contact information here, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for accepting our offer to present as quickly as your request came, frankly, and we are honored that you would be willing to share with us. Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for having this presentation this morning. And I just wanted to just very briefly question, but more to share the information. And you mentioned this in your presentation, the Healthy Minds for sure, but I think it's important for everyone to know the build out of that coalition, including our providers, Tidal Health, including, our Dr. Micah Stouffer. And it's an effort that's been going on for over 3 years. And could you just further comment, especially Dr. Stauffer, who's our Wicomico County Superintendent, who's really has kind of elevated this issue for all of us.
So I see Dr. Stauffer, I think, is on the call here. It's great to be joined. I think one of the most remarkable experiences that I personally have had since coming to Kennedy Krieger was the way we were greeted through this consortium, the Healthy Minds for Shore, that really had this expansive purview of what the needs are for the communities in that region. And in addition to education, also behavioral and neurodevelopmental health needs. It was a very cohesive and emphatic call out for bringing additional services to the shore. So from my perspective, in addition to school, we are committed also to bringing to where people live the services that they need.
Okay. So Brad, thank you very much for presenting. We did kind of alert our members that we've got a long agenda today and wanted to bring you in. Let me just say on behalf of the Eastern Shore delegation, I'm also a member of the Greater Salisbury Committee. Certainly know Micah Stauffer well, Senator Carozza. What you would sense is that there is probably an all hands on deck desire for movement in this direction. Watching Senator Bailey and Senator Zucker on that video sort of emphasizes the role that we play as elected officials to connect services to citizens where we need it most. And I'm certain, 100% certain, that our members will partner with you in any way, shape, or form to help facilitate this to the best of our ability. And I'll give you the last word. What I will say is, before you take your last word, to share with us, if you would please, your PowerPoint presentation. We'll share that just with our members. I saw some contact information there, and maybe some of our members would appreciate that for follow-up.
Thank you for that, Delegate Adams. I will also include the longer version of that video that we clipped down, so you see comments also from Dr. Grasmick. The all hands on deck, as I mentioned, the cohesiveness of the Greater Salisbury Committee and the Healthy Minds for Shore is remarkable. And we feel it and appreciate the support that you just expressed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
Members, next up, certainly a timely update from our Maryland Watermen's Association. And just as relates to process, we are fortunate enough to have Maryland Secretary of Department of Natural Resources, Josh Kurtz, on with us today. And the way that this is going to format is we're going to hear from our watermen. I'm going to allow Secretary Kurtz to make a brief presentation if he wishes, and then we'll open up questions from our members to the watermen and or our secretary. And just Robert's rules being what it is, just know that it's members that can engage in Q&A as we go through this exercise of getting updated on some very important challenges for our watermen. So without further ado, Maryland Watermen's Association, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for letting me testify here today for you. Look, back in 2003, our oyster industry was wiped out by MSX and Dermo. And over the past 5 years ago, our oyster industry was sustainable again. It recovered that well. And part of that had to do with the funds that we got from MnDOT, which is being jeopardized to us now. And we got a bill coming up Tuesday, and we need some help on that to try to get it passed. At the beginning of this oyster season, we felt very good about all the small oysters we had coming along at the end of the last oyster season, and felt that we were going to have a great oyster season. Started out oystering, everything was fine at the beginning. Everybody was catching their limits and stuff, and they still catch if you can get out there. And when Thanksgiving came and Christmas, our markets just fell apart. I started oystering back in the 60s. And in Christmas and Easter, you never could catch enough. And up to the past 2 years, just to fulfill the market, it was bad. For some reason, we got a generation of people that's not eating oysters. It might be a couple generations of them, the young ones. And we need to get some marketing out there. And there's another bill on marketing that coming that we need some help on. The problem is with the markets and the watermen just working after between Christmas and stuff, they had dropped down to 2 days a week. Then it was 1 or 2 days a week. It's made a national burden on the people. You know, it's an economic disaster. I've never seen it like that, get that bad. And now it's bad. And we got frozen, which was also not letting the people that had a little bit of market to get out and work. And then we had the big sewage spill up in DC. And at the time, they shut the Potomac River down all the way to the 301 bridge, and it was a precautionary closure because they didn't know how bad it was going to be or how far it came down. And in the meantime, the health department couldn't get out and do the amount of tests of water that they wanted to. They can now. The water has opened up pretty much, and they're working on that at the present time. But with the closure just down to the bridge, that was 60 miles away from where the spill was, the oyster bars were getting so much flack from the people that they sell to in the gallons and stuff. Where did the oysters come from? Did they come out of the Potomac? It threw a scare. But that scare, when it was thrown in, it hurt the whole industry, even through the whole state of Maryland, the Eastern Shore. And some of the bars wouldn't buy anything, oysters from close to 100 miles from where the spill was, to make sure that nobody got hurt or sick. Because if somebody gets sick from it, it would be a worse disaster than what we got now. So what we need to do, we need to get some new spin on this. It's time that we need the Maryland Department of Environment and Virginia and all of the health departments and the EPA to come out and say, hey, look, the oysters are good to eat. They passed all the Clean Water Acts. They're good to go. And that we haven't got there yet. This was a mass hysteria on it, and it's really crippled our market to go on. And we need to, at this time, be focusing on market for next year. Because if we don't get our market turned around by the 1st of October next year and get people wanting oysters, we're going to be having the same problem again selling out oysters next season, because Mother Nature's been blessed the Chesapeake Bay with the amount of oysters that we got on there. With the ice that we had, people have been out of work. I will say this, that the Department of Natural Resources just yesterday sent out thing saying that the oyster season is going to be extended for 2 weeks, so some people can get out there and work. The oyster industry, the fishing industry, in the main stem of the bay, they're frozen up ahead of it. They can't get out and fish. This will give them an extended 2 weeks to be able to work. And I want to thank the department for working on this and getting this done as quick as they did, because it's really been good. Another problem that we're looking at is to get the rockfish, the fingerlings, and the spawn to work right up there, we needed snow in the mountains. We needed a heavy rains to flush the nutrients down. Well, now when you got the snow back, now you're getting the rain to flush the nutrients out so that the plankton can form to feed these embryo and stuff once they hatch out the spawn. It's got to go through all this sewage and stuff that's been dumped into the river. Do not know what effect that's going to have on it. Now, the fishing spawning area is from 20 to 30 miles below where the spill was. So I just want to thank you for giving us time to give you a statement. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Jeff Harrison, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. You got me?
Good morning, sir. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Yeah, I guess I'll just hit a little bit off the MDOT money. It looks like, we are going to get that money, but the reality is that the commercial fishermen, along with DNR and ORP, really have to look after about 75% of the bottom, whereas sanctuaries is only 25%. But the funding for sanctuaries is probably double that of what it is for the public fishery. So we have to look for funds. I think we've secured the MDOT, at least I'm hoping we have. And so we need to look for other sources to get funding. It's good to know that our Senator Angela Alsorbrook is listening in, and that, it used to be that Barbara Mikulski used to get us some funds from the federal government. So maybe we can hopefully look at that at another time. I also want to bring up, of course, the most controversial thing is the man of war shoals. There was a recent substrate report that has come out. I don't know that it's out publicly yet, and maybe we'll talk about it at the OAC. But it basically looked at very different types of substrates, and it came out that probably the cheapest and the best substrate was those dredged shells up at, Man of War and other places at the head of the bay. Now, I know that right now we are getting shells from the West Coast, but those shells saved us last year. And again, this year they're going to get them, but they're not guaranteed. Nick and them actually had to go to a different vendor this year to get the shells. And the reason is because basically they are our competition, and our understanding, part of our market troubles is they're moving into our area selling oysters, that are already shucked along with some in the shell, and that's a problem. And so they don't want to, that first group did not want to send us shells this year because we're basically their competition. So the man of war, like I say, or those type of shells guarantee us an unlimited source of shells. Also with the market stuff, and it's like Robert T. Brown said, it's been a terrible year, one of the worst that I've ever seen myself too. And there was a program that helped aquaculture, and it's still doing it, and it was through the Nature Conservancy called SOAR. And what it did was it bought oysters, and it was right after COVID when it started, and they had oysters that they couldn't sell. And they actually bought the oysters from them and put them on sanctuaries. So I think that that's something that maybe we should look into. I don't know where funding would come to get that. Maybe we can talk to some of these groups that understand the potential that oysters have to help the bay, and maybe we could work some kind of way to do something on our market-free days that we could the commercial fishermen could do that way they would be able to work and help sanctuaries too. So another thing that I want to talk about too is the different substrates. Last year, we actually planted crushed concrete here. It took me forever to even get guys to agree to put it in the water. We put it in the water and it did really well. And so this year we were going to put it on another bar. Well, when I contacted, Frank Merengue with DNR, he told me it would take a year to get the permit, so that we would not be able to do it this year. So my concern is these permits all go through aquaculture. We need to separate that some kind of way. And I don't see how a permit can take up to a year to get. And I did bring this up at our seed and shell meeting with the NR, and they said basically there's one person that has to take care of everything. It basically take care of 2 or 3 people's jobs. And I understand that things are tight, but that's something that we need to do. We are going to put crushed concrete overboard, but now we have to wait until next year. So another thing that's happened this winter with the bad ice conditions is, even after the second week and it got so that we could get out, we were frozen. And normally we would have an icebreaker stationed here. We had to wait for the Sandusky because there was only 2 icebreakers. One was down the bay and one was up to the head of the bay to keep the shipping channels open and the pilot boats so they could get out to them. We have to look into getting either another icebreaker that can station itself in the middle of the bay. We always have one here at Tillman. And either we got to either get another icebreaker or we got to subcontract to other people or something. I feel like, the last 2 years we've had ice. I got a funny feeling that's going to go on for a couple more years. That's usually the way it goes. And so that's something. And then, of course, with the ice, we've got buoys and beacons down, and we are calling the Coast Guard and notifying them of these situations. But the buoys have been moved all over the place, and we're getting ready to start different seasons with clamming and things. And of course, the sanctuary buoys are moved. So we're worried that there, are going to be problems out there because people don't know where the lines are. So if that can get, worked on as soon as possible, we would appreciate it. And that's about all I have. So thank you, like I say, for letting me speak.
Jeff, thank you very much, Talbot Watermen's Association president, for being on, and stay with us. We're going to keep going down the line here. Next up is Sonny Gwynn, president of the Watermen's Association of Worcester County. Okay, we don't think Sonny's on right now. We'll come back to him. Chucky White, president, Kent County Watermen's Association. All right, I don't think he's on either. Yeah. So Jeff and Robert, if either of those two come on, we'll bring them in. Secretary Kurtz, are you with us this morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to thank you for being on with us. If the other two association presidents come on, we'll let them come on after you. And it's great that you're here. What we'll do is we'll let you, make a presentation. Members may have questions for you or for the Watermen, but thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things I wanted to cover today. I think Robert T. touched on a few of them too. The first being the extension of the season. So we do have out right now in emergency regs a 2-week extension for the oyster season and a 2-week extension for our striped bass gillnet season in the main stem. Because as Robert T. said, they got iced in as well. So we were able to get those out the door yesterday as emergency regs, so extending the seasons. I think we recognize though, and we've gotten feedback already from several members of the Watermen's Association, that the market though, this doesn't really help them with the market issues. And so I also recognize that we got the letter from you all, and I know Andy Harris, Congressman Harris has been supporting the disaster declaration. So I wanted to give you an update on where we are on the disaster declaration too. We met with NOAA on the 4th of February. And so NOAA is responsible for the fisheries disaster declarations. And when we do a disaster declaration, there are several thresholds we have to meet. So we wanted to meet with them and make sure that we understood exactly what they were looking at. There's a 35% threshold you have to get over for them to consider it. And the questions we had for NOAA was, what are they considering for that 35%? Is that market value? Is that bushels? Is that number of days that they're buying? Like, how does NOAA figure that out? What they pushed us towards really is bushels. So what our team has been doing, and I think Robert T. and Jeff are familiar with Jody on our team. She's been going back and actually collating and having to kind of create a little bit of a data set, not create the data set, but build out the data set from the buy tickets. And so we've been working through that right now to make sure that we've got enough data to be able to put in for a disaster declaration and have it be considered. We're expecting to have all of that information, or as much information as we can get shortly. What we're seeing is close to the 35% right now. I do think the issue we're going to have with a disaster declaration is that we won't have all of the ticket returns until a couple weeks from now. But I think we'd want to communicate with NOAA that those would still be coming in. Also one thing I wanted to point that came up in finding this information that I think is really important for us as we talk about the market. When we looked at that, the dockside value, it's not just a decline in bushels, but it's a significant decline in dockside value, dropping almost, it went from just about $12 to just over $6 this year. So it's not just that they're not buying as much, they're just also not paying the same prices. So I think that points to a real serious and long-term market issue. And I think Robert T. touched on this. Secretary Addix and I and the seafood marketing team have been meeting since December to really talk about turbocharging, supercharging what we're doing in terms of marketing and branding, especially for Maryland wild harvest oysters. And I think that's going to be a big push for us over the summer as we get into the fall for the season. I think as Robert T. said, we've got to put the pedal down on that, really drive more individuals into that space. I know MDA has been doing a lot of work too with the buyers, kind of the restaurant owners, especially in the DC metro area, to really try to get the brand and the understanding of the importance of our oysters. I got a chance to have a conversation with a couple of the chefs that they were discussing. And one of the things that we heard in those kind of like high-end markets is they want to be able to tell the story, right? So where are these coming from? So we're helping them better understand where the oysters come from. And I think having our watermen be able to tell the story of those oysters is going to be important there. So we're really working on how we as the state can boost that. We've also had conversations, I think that was a great flag, with the federal delegations from Jeff about any support they can provide us in terms of additional funds for marketing, additional funds for support. So I think that's where we're at right now, just finishing collecting that data to ensure that we can meet the threshold for the disaster declaration, and then pushing on all the other avenues that we have. I think Matt Scales and Harrison are on from MDA. So Mr. Chair, if they have anything to add, I'd be happy to, if that's okay with you.
It is, please do.
Yep. So yeah, Matt or Harrison, if there's anything you want to add about new marketing ideas, please jump in.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Addix. Secretary Kirsch. This is Matthew Scales, Director of Seafood Marketing. And as Secretary Kirsch just said, we are working to put the metal to the floor to focus on wild-caught oysters. Currently, right now, we're running the campaign Sip and Shuck, which we're highlighting. Actually, that's through a federal grant that we got through Chesapeake Gateways, where we're partnering with DNR and highlighting those restaurants and breweries, wineries, and distilleries that are using oysters paired with Maryland beer, wine, and spirits. So that's all February through the end of March, and we've put some marketing dollars behind that. And then also we will be at the Seafood Expo North America in the middle of March. And one of the products that the chef will be sampling is wild-caught oysters that will be from Harris Seafood. So at that show, there are big buyers from cruise lines and big casinos. So that's a really good opportunity to get more of wild-caught oysters out there in the market. So we are working on things. And Harrison, did you have anything to add as well?
Nope, I know Secretary Alex is on as well to jump in if he has any additional thoughts, but it's something that we're extremely cognizant about and very thankful for the partnership with both Secretary Kurtz and then Secretary McElwain over at MDE. And I see several hands, so I want to make sure that there's time for questions. Thank you.
So that was wanted to make sure we really touched on that. And then the last thing, and I think it's really important here with this, with the spill and kind of also thinking about some of the comments that were made by CDC, ensuring that we're providing that messaging consistently about the safety of our shellfish, right? We are part of the National Shellfish Sanitation Program. We have stringent and tight standards that are consistently met, and that some of the issues that the CDC were pointing to was not specific to Maryland or the Chesapeake Bay. They were issues that were happening in other parts of the country. That was not really easily understandable when you kind of read that report in those comments. So I do think messaging around not only the Potomac, but to kind of respond to the CDC is also next on the list for us too. And with that, Mr. Chair, I think that's what I wanted to share with you all today.
Okay, thank you very much. And hopefully you can stay online. It looks like we might have some questions that may head your way or to the Waterman. Before I do that Q&A, let me just make a last call for Sonny Gwynn or Chucky White. If you're on, we'd love to hear from you. If there's something technology related, I'm sorry that this didn't work out. So I'll give you a second to. Okay, Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll start out with Secretary Kurtz. First of all, I want to thank you and the DNR for your prompt attention to the request to extend the 2 seasons of oysters and rockfish. I think you made that decision really quick, and I know I've heard from a lot of watermen. They're really appreciative of those extensions. It will certainly make a difference with the amount of ice and in the case of oysters and market issues on top of the ice in. I also the Waterman's Caucus, we had a presentation last week with the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute. You know, we're trying to share some ideas, and I think the guys from Department of Ag were on there, and your people as well, and hopefully, you know, we can get some ideas from other seafood producing areas and come up with some sort of plan to actually help with this. And it sounds like everybody's getting on board. You know, there's a lot of thinking outside the box really going on in the state of Maryland to really try and move some of these oysters, and that's a good thing. But what also came up this past week in the Waterman's Caucus was, you know, try to assure the safety of oysters in the state of Maryland. The recommendation was made, very strong recommendation, second and third, and everybody else, to have the governor and you both eat a half-shell oyster in an infomercial or whatever, and you know, reassure the people of the state of Maryland that it's safe to eat oysters in Maryland. So give that some thought. I know you guys like to be on TV, so.
Delegate, I would be glad to eat as many oysters as you would like me to on television. That is not a heavy lift for me in any way.
No, we wanted you and the governor both. That was a suggestion, and
yes.
And I mean, seriously, give it some thought, because we're really dealing with some issues earlier this year, as you know, with some of the salmonella issues.
Yep. And
now with the Potomac, you know, it really has caused the problem and causing a further problem, especially in a year that we don't need that. So I do have 2 more questions if I can. If you heard Jeff Harrison talk about the buoys getting moved. What kind of action is DNR or the Natural Resource Police intending to do with these buoys moved and the lines being, not necessarily where they ought to be? I mean, what kind of action is going to be there?
Yep. So our hydrographics team is out now ensuring that the buoys are properly placed. They've been coordinating with the Coast Guard. I think that's something that our hydrographics team actually oftentimes deploys the buoys kind of under contract from the Coast Guard. So they're very comfortable with and understand those buoy systems. So hydrographics is out there right now. They're kind of like a hybrid between NRP and fisheries. And then we're still going to continue to use all the boats that we have, including the icebreakers, to ensure that they're in the right place. We don't want to have any issues with confusion for the watermen for NRP. And so we're working to ensure that we're kind of crosswalking to all the Coast Guard buoys as well.
All right, thank you. I do have a couple more questions, but I'll pass, Mr. Chairman, and let other people have an opportunity.
Well, Vice Chair, if you want to ask some questions, we'll go around the horn and we'll come back to you.
I can double dip a little later, but I thank Secretary Kurtz for answering the questions.
Secretary, if you have that little oyster eating exercise with Delegate Jacobs, let me know. I'd like to be there with you on that.
Okay, great. On that note, we did get the request from TFAC too. So that did come up through Title Fish as well, to incorporate, videos of the governor and nobody asked for me. I think there was a lot of requests for Secretary Addicks though, so.
You're in. Senator Meltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Secretary, good to see you this morning. Thank you for being on the call. Thank you very much for the additional 2 weeks. That is fantastic. That is a great thing. One issue that kind of transcends the details of what you're discussing is the public messaging. And I think the question out there is what is the administration doing about the situation? And so, I don't, have you made a decision on whether we're going to seek the NOAA disaster funding? And have you considered, the Stafford Act disaster declaration through FEMA?
So there's the two kind of different conversations there. The Stafford Act one and FEMA and MDEM, I think, are being considered as it pertains to the Potomac issue. I think for NOAA, we're taking the lead on that because it's fisheries related. And really right now, the decision is contingent on us being able to prove that we can get over the threshold for NOAA to take a look at the disaster declaration. If we can get to 35% in our numbers or demonstrate that we believe we have gotten over that. If it's between 35 and 80%, NOAA is required to do their own analysis. So they would come in and we would share all the data we have with them, and then they would verify if we've met that threshold. So right now, we just have to be able to prove that we can get over that threshold to make that request.
And there's nothing that would prevent you from seeking the NOAA disaster relief and the Stafford Act disaster declaration, correct?
We've asked our attorneys to triple check that because we don't want to undercut ourselves. I think our initial reading was that they are separate and they would not. But I do know that we're looking into the legality of that to make sure that we wouldn't, if one of them would make more sense or potentially be financially better off for the state, we don't want to get in the way of that. But our initial reading is that we would not undermine them, that doing NOAA would not undermine FEMA and vice versa.
Yeah, and with regards to the, I know Congressman Harris has written, NOAA, has contacted NOAA. Has the administration contacted NOAA officially?
Yeah, we had a meeting with them on November 4th or February 4th. So after we got the letter, we called them. We sat down with their fisheries disaster team to walk through what are the steps and what are the thresholds we need to meet. So we met with them. Yeah, I think it was just about a week after we got the letter from you all requesting the disaster declaration.
So once you ascertain the information, you intend to move forward with once you've ascertained the information that would qualify, then you intend to go forward with that NOAA.
Yeah, I think that's just where we're at right now, is making sure that we've got it all. And normally what happens is we get it in piecemeal, and then we get the big chunks at the end of the season. And so we've been going out and actually being proactive about pulling in that data from the buyers. So getting those buy ticket receipts. So we're compiling all that right now. I think we're getting pretty close to having a critical mass of all that information.
Is there a benefit of seeking NOAA disaster money versus the Stafford Act disaster, the major disaster relief funding? Is there a benefit to go for one versus the other? Because I believe originally I was under the assumption, I've learned a lot about disaster relief, that we were originally, my understanding is that when we brought this letter up, my assumption was we were requesting the Stafford Act, the 5 million, because I believe that's where in the past Senator Mikulski was able to was able to receive funding. I know with the Stafford Act, that's a different legal, it brings different legal relief. One thing that's of major concern are the ability of individuals to be able to pay simple financial obligations like bank notes and things like that, and it would give them more time to be able to pay those. Have you, I mean, notwithstanding clearly what's gone on with that sewage spill, the largest in the nation's history, in the Potomac River, I mean, that's clearly in that Stafford Act disaster relief. But that aside, just what's happened in the Bay this year between the ice and the lack of market, wouldn't that qualify for Stafford Act also?
Yeah, we've been focused on the NOAA one specifically just for related to the ice, to your point, and the markets, because of what that mitigating funding can be used for. And so that has been what we've kind of zeroed in on. But I'll double check with the team on the Stafford Act and see if maybe there's more flexibility in that fund source. It might make sense for us to reconsider and go that route. We went with NOAA specifically because that fund stays in the fishery. And with my understanding with some of the other more broad the disaster declarations, that they might not be able to target it as much. So we just wanted to make sure that it's staying in the fishery.
Yeah, and clearly now with the disaster down there in the Potomac River, that's now it has to be on the table, right?
Everything's on the table with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if one important thing is messaging, because we're working on some things behind the scenes. The relief, if either of these, and this is for people that are listening. So say we were to receive NOAA funding, say we were to receive Stafford Act funding, right? All the requests, we meet all the thresholds. That money and relief probably isn't going to be available for at least a month or so. Is that correct?
It'll take some time to get the funding. Yeah. And the other thing that we're cognizant of is that we're not going to be the only state putting in for disaster requests at this period of time. We saw this with the blue catfish disaster request. We came in with ours. We thought we had a very strong case, and then the collapse of the Alaska crab market kind of sucked up all the funds from that fund source. So it is also going to be dependent on what other disaster declarations they are processing at this point in time. NOAA did make that very clear when we spoke to them. So that will also determine that is a finite pot of money of how much funds or what those funds could look like. And unfortunately, we don't know that because that's on the NOAA side, right? They're the ones who are looking at all of them in aggregate. So I think that's a concern. But to your point, I think the goal here is figure out the pathway that gets the quickest relief, but it will take time. It will take time for them to be able to send us that money.
Well, I appreciate your attention to this. I appreciate your work on it. And if you do send a letter for NOAA and you do move forward, if you could let Chairman Adams' office know, he can share it with the delegation. And as you move forward and get into the disaster in the Potomac River, which I don't know why we would wait on that. I mean, that's, I know it's at different levels. I've seen the dialogue between the governor and the president going back and forth. I don't really care who asked for it, but I mean, it's going on. But and if any of that stuff, if you hear anything, please could send it over to Delegate Chairman Adams, because he'll share it with all of us. And and I want to give you a heads up that on the Senate side, Senator Carozza, Senator Hershey, myself, and Senator Bailey are all working on maybe a short-term thing, kind of these folks are out of money. They need money next week, and we're kind of working on some concepts that may be able to put together a program and then backfill that with disaster relief funding, try to expedite things. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. But we're trying to come up with some new concepts. But thank you very much. And I also had a question for the marketing team. And who was the first presenter for the marketing team?
That's Matt Scales. He's the director of the marketing team at MDA.
Yeah, is Matt still on this call?
Yes, sir, Senator. I'm right here.
Yeah, Matt, have you met with any of the wholesalers?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like JJ McDonald, Reliant, Tillman Island, those type of folks.
Yeah. Well, Joe Spurry is in Bosman, and then Benny Horseman's down in Madison Bay. Of course, Jason Ruth. Have you met with them and talked to them?
Yeah, and I've talked with Jason Ruth, and Jason Ruth is actually on our Seafood Marketing Commission.
Okay.
We're actually having a that's something I forgot to mention. We're having a Seafood Marketing Advisory Commission meeting next Thursday, 3 to 5. It is in person, or it's hybrid, in person at MDA headquarters. Or
too much info. I just want to make sure you were in communication with them.
Yep.
I understand that they can't sell oysters because they're having a difficulty. They're having in the national market, the 80-pound bag restriction is a major problem for them in selling oysters. Have you been told that?
I've been told that we were selling oysters down south, and now that their oysters are good in the Gulf, or they don't need our oysters anymore. So that's contributing to the market as well.
I just in your marketing as doing the outward marketing and trying to sell oysters, I'd be interested to know internally if there are things in the state of Maryland that make us less competitive with other states, because I'm told that there are a number of things that make the Maryland oyster difficult to purchase. And I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. That's my perception. I can't give you, X, Y, and Z example, but that would be another thing in marketing. I think that would be very helpful if you were to, work on that and find out if there's legitimacy in some items, you could bring them to Secretary Kurtz and the delegation. We'd be happy to try to find ways to make sure we're just as competitive as our neighboring states.
Yes, Senator. I'll up at the commission meeting next week.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator, for leading that series of questions. Very helpful. To Jeff and Robert T., the Maryland Watersmen's Association, I have a question and maybe give you an opportunity to feedback, if you will, on what you've heard up to this point. But, as a Eastern Shore representative, Eastern Shore delegation, we recognize the heritage of the watermen and what that industry means to the Eastern Shore and who we are as a region in the state of Maryland. And I thought I'd give you an opportunity just for the public. We've got 65 people on the Zoom call, plus it's publicly available. So we don't know how many people are actually paying attention to this. Just share briefly why a four-season industry like watermen, the oyster industry, or that oyster season is so important as we try to continue to maintain the business of seafood. So Robert and Jeff, if you'd like to respond to that, and then of course give you a chance to feedback on what you've heard up to this point.
Yes, it's Robert T. Look, the oyster business is like the backbone of the industry. Just about anybody who's in the seafood industry, oysters a certain amount. They make crab most of the season, but they'll oyster a little bit during the winter. It's just a way of life that it's been for years. It's our heritage. We've came a long way since we had this back in 2003 and 2004 when we were wiped out by MSX and Dermo. But it comes at just about pretty much everybody, even if they clam during the summer or crab. They rely on oystering. It takes in a slack period of time when there's not much else to do. There's a few people can fish. A lot of people don't have the rockfish quota and not able to do it. And the thing about oystering used to be, you knew if you went to work, you could make a day's work. Now, you can't go to work because you don't have a place to sell the product. And that's really an economic disaster to the whole seafood industry. Thank you.
Yeah, what we're saying, and of course, we shuck the oysters at Talbot Waterman Association. And I think Jeannie might have sent our annual report to you guys if you want to look it over. But we shucked oysters just last week in Annapolis, and of course, probably had a dozen people say to us, they're not from the Potomac, aren't they? So you always have that, that thought in the back of your head that something that you're eating, could have, make you sick. So that's not good for our industry at all. And we still went through about the same amount of oysters. I mean, once people try them, they like them. We had people come back for more. We're also shucking again here in Easton this evening and all day tomorrow for the fire and ice. And so when we're out into the community, we ask people, and what we're seeing is they ask where they're from, and I know they said they want a story, and that's what we're finding is that people want to have a story behind the oyster. And so what we're telling them now is that they're Chesapeake Bay, or they're bay raised instead of wild caught, or we'll take wild caught, bay raised Chop Tank River oysters is what we're going to be using today. So we're trying our best at the marketing thing, but what we do when we go out into the community, we basically give the oysters away because we are looking for people. We understand that younger people aren't necessarily eating oysters, and we love to have, and this is a fire and ice. We'll have a lot of kids that'll try oysters for the first time. So that's what we're seeing. And of course, the oyster industry, it's like he says, it's huge. We have well over 300 surcharges in Talbot County, and we probably have the most licensed watermen than any other county. So it is big for us. Right now, we are, our organization, we have people calling us up saying, how can they help? And we're getting ready to establish a fund where we can help people immediately. We're just setting it up probably by this week. As you know, it takes a little bit to set something up like that and then determine who is, deserving and who isn't. And that's the hard part of it all, figuring out, who we need to help. But we have a lot of young watermen that started here within the last 10 years, and we definitely don't want to lose them. The bulk of the watermen in Talbot County are older, and we understand that they are going to be, they're going to be the ones that are keeping our heritage going. So oysters are extremely important. We've been fortunate that God's looking after us, and things have changed out here. I have never seen, well, I'm not going to say that because I have seen as many oysters as it is out there now, but we're definitely seeing a certain sense of sustainability where there's more little oysters and then big oysters when you make a lick. So, we definitely need some help marketing, and we definitely need some help with more funds so that we can not only do the areas that we have, but we can expand into other areas. And with the oysters doing the way they are, we feel like that, we can grow more oysters in the bay now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, and God bless our watermen. We had you on the agenda for probably about a month or so, and it's led to this, and we appreciate your presentation today, and know that the Eastern Shore delegation thanks the world of everyone who does this trade and industry and the difficulties that come with it, notwithstanding what we're actually dealing with now. I thought I would just give the Secretary and MDA last word before we move along with our agenda. So if you're still on and would like to close us out on the subject, here's your chance to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just thank you for the time. I appreciate it. We've been in really close contact. I want to thank Robert T. and Jeff. I think having the leadership team be really tight with us has been really helpful in us being able to get these things moving really quickly. We met with the county oyster commissions pretty much right away after that request came in. So that's been really helpful, and we'll continue to work with them, through TFAC and obviously just regular communication. And I just wanted to really quickly touch on something Senator Mounts asked for. Happy to share. I'll just start sharing, I guess, directly through you, Mr. Chair, all the information that we're getting from the buy tickets, where we are on the disaster declaration, so that you all know. I think we're feeling pretty good about the amount of information that we've got right now, but we'll continue to collate and hopefully get that done over the next few days.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, no further questions from our members. Thank you very much, everyone, for your presentation and the good information, and thank you for answering the questions today. Next up, we've got Delmarva Chicken Association, Grayson Middleton, Government Affairs Manager. Grayson, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks for having us. Good to be with my favorite delegation, I don't mind saying, as long as you all don't tell anybody else. But we're happy to present on some industry stats and some of our government affairs priorities. So I'm just going to share screen real quick. All right, well, I'm familiar with almost everybody on the call, at least our delegation, but just as a recap, we like to call ourselves the Chamber of Commerce for the chicken community on Delmarva. So we represent the growers, the companies, and the allied businesses on the Eastern Shore. We often refer to that as a three-legged stool. And that sort of illustrates the way that our ag economy on the shore is integrated, especially with the grain farmers and the chicken community. One cannot exist without the other, as we often say. And Lindsay Thompson, who's also on the call, will tell you that something like over 90% of the grain grown on the Eastern Shore is converted to chicken feed. So very central to the agrarian economy on the Eastern Shore. And just as a way of giving you some updates on our stats, we have about 1,200 family farms, 5 chicken companies with 16,671 employees. And of course, we have partnerships with universities, governments, and hundreds of allied businesses. I should also mention Holly Porter my executive director was on the call. She had to jump off real quick for an HPAI update, but she should be back on in just a few minutes. And these are the 5 companies that we have. We have Allen Harem, Amick Farms, Mountain Air, Tyson Foods, and of course, Purdue Farms. So we recently got back our 2025 chicken stats. And so we raised 627 million Delmarva chickens. That equates to around 4.7 billion pounds of chicken. And that comes from 1,225 family farms. We like to say the chicken GDP, or the value of all the chicken produced, is around $4.63 billion. And some more stats, so that we have about right around 5,000 chicken houses on Delmarva. Again, 16,000 chicken company employees, $1.2 billion, again, speaking of the three-legged stool, spent on corn, soybeans, wheat, and other feed ingredients. We have a $5.4 billion total economic output, so that's implied and also direct. And then $254 million are paid in Maryland state and local taxes annually. And about 10% of all U.S. chicken comes from Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. So we are the birthplace of the broiler industry, and we continue to be, for our size at least, a major leader nationally. So just to give you an idea of how important this industry is to the Delmarva economy. Speaking of Maryland specifically, we are 46% of ag sales or on farm cash receipts for Maryland. And I'll go through these pretty quickly because I know we're a little bit behind schedule, but this just gives you an idea of we've pretty much stayed static for the past few decades as far as chicken houses. However, you can see the pounds of meat produced has increased substantially. And, we like to highlight that because it's showing that we are producing chickens more efficiently, less energy, less feed, less really equipment is going into producing more chicken. So we are increasing efficiency every year and being mindful of our environmental footprint in that way, but also, of course, it's good business to operate that way. And this is the contract payment to chicken growers. You see that has grown steadily over the past 3 decades, and the value of chicken produced has followed that. So I wanted to talk about some hot topics real quick, and I think I'll delve into the to the first one a little bit more as I talk about our priority legislation, but this delegation very graciously sent a letter to the MDE secretary on this issue. So as many of you know, in July 2025, the general CAFO permit for chicken farms, which is required by every chicken farm in the state, expired. So this is what we call a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit. These are permits that are delegated from the EPA to MDE, and they expire every 5 years. MDE can give their own reasons for why this happened, but it happened. And this has resulted in around $35 million of construction stalled. So that is in and of itself a very hard negative economic impact, but that does not account for the transfers, the real estate fees, the banking fees, and of course the lost on-farm income that many family farmers were counting on. So this has been significant. And I want to say also that the $35 million figure is extremely conservative. I suspect it's actually closer to 100 or 150, but these are just figures that we've gotten from Farm Credit alone. So again, I suspect we're being conservative there. High path avian influenza, I find myself talking about this every year now. So I want to say, unfortunately, this is, I believe, the new normal. I think that we can expect this disease to follow migratory patterns every year going forward, at least for the foreseeable future. The good news is that as this has become more common, our industry has ramped up the biosecurity, and we're proud to say that there's been no lateral spread of the disease, meaning there's been no house-to-house or farm-to-farm spread. It has all been, we suspect, due to the migratory waterfowl. There have been 3 cases I say this season and not this year because this really started back in the late fall. But one in Queen Anne's, one in Caroline, and one in Wicomico. And again, I can't stress the importance of the cooperation between MDA and the USDA. MDA continues to do an awesome job at addressing this issue and at the sites, the work that they do at the sites. And as this has become more common, we have all worked to decrease the downtime losses, meaning the time that a farm needs to stay inactive in order for the virus to be completely cleared. So I'm going to go back to CAFO for our legislative priority. This is our #1 legislative priority by far. I am very thankful to Senator Carrozza for taking the initiative to take this issue up on the Senate side. And of course, to the entire Eastern Shore delegation who has, I believe, sponsored this bill. So, I spoke about how the permit expired in July. It is still expired. The public comment period recently ended. And so we are still without a permit. And this means that there's a law on the books that says you have to be permitted fully before you start even construction. And actually, the law says any part of a CAFO, meaning these farmers cannot even do any site work or stormwater management on their farms until they have a CAFO permit in hand. That's the law on the books right now. So basically, this law that we've put forward, we're still in an amendments process to clarify a few things, but it would allow farmers in the event of extension or expiration to begin construction on their chicken houses before receiving full CAFO coverage. And I want to be clear that the CAFO permit process will still follow as it always has. However, it will allow, as they are constructing, basically public input and the normal site reviews that you would have under the normal CAFO permit process. So MDE is going to still retain all the discretion. All the normal reviews and processes will remain the same. I just really can't stress that enough. And of course, will allow stalled business to proceed. I suspect one of you will ask me, when is the new permit expected to be released? And the truth is, that's something we're trying to clarify ourselves. We suspected that it would be, well, I mean, in the beginning, we expected that it would be done by maybe, January, but that's obviously not going to be the case. We were expecting, that we'd have a permit done by April. We're hearing some additional information from MDE that would suggest that won't be the case either. And so, Senator Carozza and Delegate Boyce, they are running this bill as an emergency bill because I think that this will have an immediate impact when passed. In other words, I think that when this bill is passed, there will still not be a permit, and that this will allow farmers to begin construction. So. Another one of our priority bills, of course, we've been paying attention to the solar issue very closely because any loss of acreage of productive farmland means that we need to import more grain. We are already importing a significant amount of grain to feed our chickens, and every acre of grain of farmland that is lost means that we have to import more. And of course, that comes at a higher cost and also at a higher carbon footprint because it needs to be railed. So HB 460 would reduce the cap on priority preservation area solar development from 5% to 2%, and that translates to around 103,000 acres to 33,000 acres. So, it doesn't sound like a lot. You're moving, just 3%, but it actually translates to quite a bit of land that we'd be keeping in production. And of course, preserving funding for critical ag programs, and we are also working with the Maryland Department of Agriculture on that. And I would say I call these legislation of concern. These are bills that that we have or are opposing. One is HB 91. So this is the neonicotinoid pesticide prohibition. I'm not going to touch too much on it because I think Farm Bureau will dive into this more. But suffice to say that neonicotinoid pre-treated seed is critical for reliable grain production, and it protects against many pre-emergent diseases that exist in the soil. The differences between pre-treated and untreated are stark. And we expect that if this legislation were to pass, we wouldn't even be able to get a sufficient supply of untreated seed because it is so common in United States agriculture and world agriculture, to be honest. And then there's the HB 1268 Cherish Act. We are not opposed to environmentally justice focused legislation. However, this specifically lists CAFO. So, I just went through, touched on how burdensome the process to get a CAFO permit is. This would further complicate that process, and furthermore, it is as a general permit that is negotiated between MDE and EPA. We have taken the position that you cannot add additional stipulations to that permit, and MDE agreed with that position last year. So I'm talking with them about how that issue can be addressed this year, but I expect that they'll take the same legal position as they did before. And this is just to say again, we take biosecurity very, very seriously, and it's our main defense against HPAI, and our farmers are working hard every day to stop the spread. So I will stop sharing my screen now. And I guess I'll take any questions, or we can wait until the end of the ag presentations.
Why don't we go ahead and take questions right now with you to focus on your issues, and then if you can stay on, if you're able to stay on, we can do that.
Sure.
Vice Chair Jacobs, thank you for your leadership for the Waterman community. I did mention Delegate Mounts, but certainly you are the leader on the Eastern Shore for those issues for our watermen, and we thank you as a delegation for that. You get the first question to DCA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Grayson, you touched on a lot of good things. I think the CAFO process is going pretty well. Looks like it's going to be some amendments offered, but I believe we're working down towards that path pretty quick. Certainly I'm trying to do what I can to make it be a priority. And I know that our chicken industry is looking forward to this being resolved. But the two things I wanted to ask you about, I heard there was some damage from some broiler houses that sustained damage this winter from the storms, and also, you know, excessive heat or energy use, you know, due to the cold weather. Could you touch on that real briefly?
I will let Holly talk about the damaged houses because I think that she's more up to date on that and than I am. But I can certainly talk about the energy real quick. I mean, you know, energy is our in particular electricity is our highest input cost by far. And you know, every rate hike that we've seen across the state affects our farmers just as much, if not 10 times more, because again, that is their largest bill that they get every month. So it is affecting them tremendously, and it's a major issue for us. I don't know what else I could add to that except, you know, we want to see solutions on affordability like everybody else in the state. But it's a little bit more crucial for us, I would say.
Thank you.
Molly.
Good afternoon, members of the committee again, and I'll just address that. We were fortunate in the fact that we did have, I think it was 4 houses total that did have impacts because of the snow. I say fortunate because there was about 30 in the Valley of Virginia and over 120 in Arkansas and that area as well too. So we did have, it was a small amount, fortunately, but and again, we're working closely, you know, folks are working closely with those growers and what they can receive, especially from USDA when it comes to some help on that.
Thank you, Holly.
Okay, Senator Croza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for having the Delmarva Chicken Association with us today. And Grayson, I wanted to follow up on Senate Bill 371, our CAFO permit bill, just to ask you if we've talked about making sure there's accurate information out about the legislation as we work through some amendments, and just making clear that the legislation has no impact on the permitting process or water quality, and that the poultry farms would not be operational until they are fully permitted by MDE. Can you just let the delegation know that you've kind of putting those facts out there in case the individual members have questions or are receiving questions about the legislation?
Sure, and let me start by saying if anybody's getting, you know, mail about this, I'd be happy to meet one-on-one with any of you and kind of go through this because it's not intuitive how this permitting process works. But there is information being put out there by certain groups. I think that we've kind of moved away from this through the negotiation process, but you know, information being put out by certain groups that this is basically going to allow a bonanza to occur, and that, you know, the permitting process is being thrown out the window, and that's absolutely not the case. We are still following every step of the law as you have to under the Clean Water Act, and you know, there's still opportunity for review with the department. There's still public input. MDE was actually gracious enough to put together a flow chart of how this permitting process works. And it almost makes it more complicated because there's just so many layers to it. But again, you know, I've been meeting with members both of EEE and ENT to clarify that as much as I can. And I know that you know, we've had support from both MDE and the Department of Ag, and they have been having their own separate meetings to clarify that information. So we are trying to hammer that home as much as possible, and I think that we're succeeding in that.
Thank you for that. And again, I think pointing out that the Maryland Department of the Environment and the Maryland Department of Agriculture are supporting the bill and working with us is significant. Thank you, Grace.
That's right. Yes, thank you.
So Grayson, I'm not seeing any further questions. And let me just say, we talked earlier with the Watermen's Association and the heritage industry that the Eastern Shore depends on. You and the poultry industry, and of course our farmers are the other half of that heritage. And watching us go through some of these difficult subjects the way we are, it's number one, we thank the poultry industry for their leadership and maintaining presence here. Frankly, I worry a great deal with solar proliferation. Certainly, when you see things like the CAFO permit not being renewed, how very important that was, but yet it was allowed to expire. I mean, these are headwinds that we can ill afford to have at the moment. So we thank your industry for what you're doing, because without poultry and without agriculture, the Eastern Shores, and I mean, it goes without saying, in deep trouble. Delegate Aaron's.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I apologize, but I think if we could maybe just take a brief moment of silence. We lost a great farmer in Queen Anne's County this last week in Temple Roads. If you wouldn't mind, a personal privilege, we just take a moment of silence for him.
Yes.
Thanks. He was pretty important to a lot of us. Good family, good man, and I think the farm world lost a good guy. So, thank you very much for letting me do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Grayson, unless you have a closing remark, I did see Holly on the call. We do have a moment or two. If Holly would like to say a few words, we can certainly grant her that opportunity to do that.
No, I appreciate it. Again, I won't belabor. I think Grayson did a great job. I apologize. I'm jumping back and forth between meetings with high path avian influenza, which of course, as we know, is still here, not going anywhere. But at the same time, we are in a much better position than we were last year. And again, a lot of that is because of our partnership with the departments of Ag and USDA. So appreciate all of the kind words. And again, we are here to help and support. And any questions, definitely reach out to Grayson or I.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, we thank you guys for your steadfast support as always. It's good to have you all behind our back when we go to bat for these issues.
We often feel like your industry has our back, and we appreciate that as well. So it's a two-way street. Okay, well, let's move along to Maryland Farm Bureau. Tyler Huff, the floor is yours. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And always good to see our friends on the Eastern Shore and the Eastern Shore delegation here this morning. So for those of you that don't know me, Tyler Huff, I'm the Director of Government Relations with Maryland Farm Bureau. Maryland Farm Bureau, we're a grassroots membership organization that has 23 county farm bureaus, their own independent county farm bureau, and most of the delegation already interacts and spends a lot of time visiting with those farm bureaus over the course of the year, and appreciate that nonetheless. We are at the state level with a policy book that is ultimately put together by that membership. Our policy starts at the county level, works its way up through the process, and is ultimately codified and put into our book at our annual convention in December, held in Cambridge at the Hyatt every year. So we then also have the American Farm Bureau Federation, who is located in DC, handling a lot of the issues on the federal level, and they're operating with a federal policy book as well. When it comes to ag, it's no issue or no surprise that land use has been one of the biggest concerns that we've seen from the various pressures, whether it's solar that was discussed on end last year through the legislation, or we're seeing push from urban sprawl and housing, as well as the push now with data centers that are coming and potentially taking even more and more farmland and causing potential other issues across the state. Land use has been a big piece of concern and something that we have talked about nonstop throughout the course. On that same note, we've seen a lot of push for diversification from our farmers because of just how expensive things have gotten, and with how expensive things have gotten, and the fact that there's less land out there for agriculture, there's less land out there to be utilized, and we've seen a big push for that diversification and the value added industries, which I know this delegation has had a bill or two in this year. They're very supportive of the cottage foods and very supportive of that value add group this year to help diversify and just show how steadfast the farmers are to be able to preserve that land and be able to push forward and continue to be successful, because profitable farmers is by far the number one way that we keep land in farming. That's how we keep land in conservation or keep that farmland preserved. This year has been one of the most expensive crops, if not the most expensive crop to be put in the ground. On top of that, we've dealt with still commodity prices that are showing up in the 70s, in the 80s, or same prices they were getting then. It's certainly a challenge to make that profit margin and be competitive in the market as things have gone up in price or up in cost without really coming up in price that we're receiving on the opposite end. And as Grayson said, it's a industry that works together fully and totally. Without the poultry industry on the Eastern Shore, it makes it an even bigger challenge for agriculture throughout. So it's an industry that all works together, stays together, and even though we're different in what we do, need to be one voice as we all go forward. And I think it's done a great job with SDCA, Lindsay and Maryland grain producers, great relationship with the Department of Agriculture and working with them and DNR on various issues. So I think it's shown up from the voice and the advocacy that we're all working together and all focused on the same issues. Talking about some of our priority legislation, I don't have a big fancy PowerPoint like Grayson did, so I'm just going no extra visuals there. But I think it shows how much we're all on the same page when two of the three bills that he talked about are bills that were also high priority lists there. He covered the CAFO bill very well. Excited to have Senator Carrozza on that. I was disappointed to be away with Lead Maryland last week and not have the opportunity to testify on that myself, but Parker and Jeannie and Ryan stepped in and did a phenomenal job, and looking forward to being involved in the process moving forward. I want to talk more about HB 460, which is the solar bill. Delegate Adams knows this probably better than anybody from the conversations we had with the next energy solar bill, SB 931 last year, and the concerns, especially on the Eastern Shore when it comes to solar energy. The solar development is looking for their least invasive place to go. When I say invasive, I mean from the standpoint that they have to do the least amount of work to be able to get that facility up and running. And the Eastern Shore becomes a large focus for that because of the scape of the land, how it was broken down, and also the fact that we have a large population of farmers that are leasing their land rather than owning their land. I think it's important to remember that 40% of the acres that are farmed within the state of Maryland are leased acres and not owned acres. So a lot of absentee landowners, that opens opportunity there for them looking for the best price for the land, and not all the time the farmer can compete with what some of the solar developers are offering. And that prime and productive soil is something that once it's gone, we can't get it back. It's not a recurring resource. So once that prime and productive soil is gone, it's not coming back. And the HB 460, with the drop of the priority preservation acres from 5% to 2%, adds a meaningful protection for agriculture within the state, especially on the Eastern Shore. You saw the numbers at 5%. Statewide, that's roughly 103,000 acres, and drop down to with the 2% would be roughly 33. The other important piece to reference with that is it was said by MEA a couple of years ago that we need roughly 30,000 acres of solar to be able to hit our renewable portfolio standard goals, and that carve out that was set in 2019, and that's 30,000. So that 2% especially still gives that window that if it was unfortunate enough that all this went on farmland and priority preservation acres, they could still hit that goal with the 2%. While we're under 5%, all of that acres for solar that is needed to hit the renewable portfolio carve out could go on the Eastern Shore alone. And that's a scary thing to think about, especially when a lot of our agriculture is centered on the Eastern Shore, especially when we're looking at production of grain and those larger scale operations that are needed to be able to keep the poultry industry on the shore, to be able to keep agriculture strong and prosperous in the state. So one of those major concerning pieces, that's why it's one of our priority bills moving forward, especially this session, and we continue to keep working on it. Senator Gallion also has just recently dropped a bill. It gets heard next week that is going to incentivize some solar development for rooftop, for brownfield, for parking lot, and within that same breath, offer an opportunity for that incentivized off prime acre solar to be counted as part of that carve out within the priority preservation acres of the state or of that particular county where it is. So I think another place where energy is a common thing. Energy bills are through the roof, and that's something that is challenging for agriculture. As Grayson said, with the high inputs on the poultry side, we're also looking at dairies having to run coolers. We're looking at value-added operations that are running freezers 24 hours a day, grain dryers, all that is high energy, high cost. So these rising energy bills are really being felt within the ag community. So we understand the need to get some more generation on, but we want to preserve that farmland at the same time, which I think a bill like Senator Gallion has proposed is going to help incentivize that off of that ag land and help be part of the solution there as well. Another one I wanted to highlight here, Grayson briefly talked about it, was HB 91, which is the neonicotinoid prohibition bill that is only on the House at the moment. That bill, as Grayson said, would prevent the seed treatment using neonic pesticides within the state of Maryland, as well as would prevent over-the-top application of neonic on specific turf grass production. So we do have some turf grass members within the Maryland Farm Bureau, and a concern for them to use a tool, to lose a potential tool there. But I think the bigger piece is on the grain side, as Grayson alluded to. Pretty much all of the seed that is used in Maryland is treated with a neonic. It allows for that healthy start. It allows for a better chance to get up out of the ground and get going. And it also allows for agriculture to use no-till and other bay healthy practices that are essential to preserving the bay and being smart about the bay at the same time, as well as getting that head start and making for a better crop that is less likely to have to be replanted and cause even more cost issues there. So that is one of our priority ones that we have been opposing this year. On the standpoint of funding, it was a challenging year with the budget last year. We saw many cuts to preservation, to cover crop, other places of that, especially within program open space. Within the House and the Senate is HB 609 and SB 424, which is Delegate Griffith, and then Senator Jennings, which is a bill that goes into add for the repayment in the future needs of that 25 million that was taken from land preservation this year in program open space to require that repayment in the future. It's no secret that that MOUF program and other preservation programs and cover crop are essential. I can't count the number of times this year that Jay Jacobs has made sure everybody remembers that the cover crop program is the program that works, it's proven, and we need to make sure that is there and it is the best return on investment. So that bill would help allow for more of that repayment and make sure that that fund doesn't look as appetizing for more movement in the future years. And then another one here that is HB 972, which is the Maryland Fair and Education Promise Act. That bill is coming from Delegate Delegate Miller this year. What that does is the special fund for, or excuse me, the special fund for racehorse goes into funding the Maryland Ag Fair Board, Maryland Ag Education Foundation, among others, Maryland State Fair, and is really vital for the youth within, especially the Eastern Shore, that is involved with those shows and involved with agriculture. That fund has been short for many years. A lot of that is because it's funded by the unclaimed racing mutuals, which with the involvement of online gambling have decreased tremendously. So this piece of legislation would go ahead and tap into the education fund at the lottery, because being a 4-H alumni, I have full belief that 4-H and everything, ag education, there's no doubt that is education, and pull out the Maryland Ag Ed Foundation, Maryland Ag Fair Board, who funds all the local county fairs and all the local shows with money to make sure that the kids are able to receive premiums and other prizes. as well as the Maryland 4-H or the Maryland FFA chapter and the Maryland State Fair, and fund them fully at their slotted amounts currently in the Racing Special Fund, and pull that money from the Lottery Education Fund. So another way that I think we could find a win to help with ag education, to really fund our youth and really fund that next generation of agriculture as they come up and move forward. So those are the big things for me this morning. Mr. Chair, I always appreciate the time and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll see if we have a couple questions coming along. Let me just say this about the solar bill last year. Grayson and I were together last session, and we were, for the life of us, trying to figure out where did this percentage come from? Where did the 5%? I mean, was it scientific? Was just, do we pull the percentage out of thin air? Was it a and you know what Grayson and I talked about was that when you take that percentage and throw it into real acreage, the percentage is completely useless. That is a worthless measure to be able to define what it is the state needs to do, and that's what's frustrating to a great extent. Is that, you know, while Grayson's talking about that, the inputs that you provide, Tyler, your industry provides to poultry, are completely at threat right now because of something like this. Look, I would like to think that a bill will pass that will reduce the percentage, if for no other reason than for the legislature to have some sense of credibility when it comes to, you know, defining how much acreage we really need to make it somewhat realistic. I assume you agree, but you know, don't you? I need to make this a question. I mean, don't you agree that the 5% just seems arbitrary, but not only arbitrary, but very harmful, because it doesn't appear to be thoughtful in the sense of what it looks like in reality?
Completely agree. It does feel like a number, especially when you put that percentage to an acreage that was kind of pulled out of thin air. And the 103,000 acres statewide is not a meaningful protection. It is going to be a really, really long time before we ever get to 103,000 acres of solar in the state of Maryland, if we ever even get there. So it's certainly not a meaningful protection. It's a number that I wish there was more of an explanation of where it came from, and definitely agree with you, Mr. Chair.
Well, the Eastern Shore delegation, we're a deliberative, group of thoughtful legislators, and at some point, you hope that the legislature passes legislation that demands that sort of moderate, thoughtful policy. That's what that bill does. It hopes to correct a mistake from last year. That's my sense of it. I'm not seeing any questions, which means that we thank you for your time and appreciate your leadership on these bills, as we're in the middle of it. This is the sausage making season here in Annapolis, and we appreciate your leadership and sussing out the details and assisting our industry on the Eastern Shore.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Okay, members, let's go to the federal updates. Kim Cradaville, I missed her last week before she could get on the microphone. So Kim, we'll let you start this morning.
Well, thank you very much. Once again, I was talking last week and my microphone was not working properly, but we're still continuing. I know Alyssa Hastings is on as well, and we're continuing our congressionally directed spending meetings with nonprofits and local and municipal governments. So please feel free to reach out with your projects. And I've done some follow-up here between the Delmarva Poultry and with Secretary regarding some of the federal issues that were raised here this morning, and we'll be sure to follow up with those folks. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alyssa Hastings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just echoing what Kimberly said about the congressionally directed spending. Our deadline for submissions will be March 15th. So we're taking meetings up until that point. Happy to talk through any applications, answer any questions, and looking forward to another round. Thank you all.
Okay, and before we pass along to Mike Detmer, I'll just say that for the benefit of the order here, we have both Senator Van Hollen and Senator Osserbrooks that will be presenting to the delegation over the next couple, 3 weeks, and we look forward to hearing those updates. We heard from Congressman Harris at the beginning of our legislative session, and we appreciate his leadership as well. So with that being said, Mike Detmer, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, delegation. First thing is we're certainly following this oyster issue very closely. Other than that, just building on Kim and Alyssa's statements about the directed spending, the one thing I would say, senators and delegates, I would request if you're in touch with anybody that's hoping to turn one in, or if they need a letter of support from you, it's possible on our side that the process could accelerate pretty quickly. I think the deadline is March 13th, but we're asking people to look at it as please get it turned in as soon as possible. So respectfully put that out there for your consideration. Of course, we're available for any federal concerns, tours, flags, citations, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So members, unless we have something for the good of the order, I need a motion and a second to close our meeting today.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see each other next week.